Alright, so I just finished watching Movie Geek 17's new Coffee and Comics video. And he basically talked about how to create villains, you know, what makes the villain a villain that you created, and what basically it would have to put into making this villain. So this got me going. You know, I've created some major villains, not just for my original stories, but a lot more so. I love creating more so than original villains for original stories I write, which I seldom do now because of thanks to the Marvel 2012 web fanfiction site, and a few fanfictions here and there I bebop around. So I decided to talk about, for the next few videos, villains I've created for villains I created for fanfictions involving TV shows and cartoons that I watch, and a few of them I really enjoy. I'm really going to enjoy talking about. So I'm going to kick things off with, of all shows you can see right here, Adventure Time. Yeah, that's right, guys. I created villains for Adventure Time. Amazing, right? So I created a few. Starting off with Ret-Khan. Now, Ret-Khan, Khan as in Khan, that kind of Khan, but Ret-Khan was basically my voice about the DC reboot and reboots and renumberings in general. Basically, Ret-Khan was this godlike being. He was pretty much kind of based off of Q, Puck, and all the other, you know, like Discord, and all the other godlike tricksters you see in the shows, in a lot of animated shows and live action here or there. But basically, Ret-Khan was this godlike being. He was this impish trickster. And basically, he was also kind of like Batmite in some ways you could compare him to. And basically what he was he was a big fan of the world of the land of Oo. He always loved the land of Oo. He found it amusing. But in recent months, he's been actually like kind of downhearted by the recent events, you know, of Princess Bubblegum not accepting Finn's love, and a few other things that he hasn't really liked recently. So he basically reboots every time. He basically reboots the land of Oo. He reboots it in a way that Finn gets everything he wanted. He gets to be with Princess Bubblegum despite age. Marceline gets to be her own person and away from her father's rules. Jake and Princess Rainicorn are married. A lot of things, like it's pretty much like Finn's perfect life, but then Finn starts to remember this. He thinks this is his life, but then he starts to remember, first in dreams, that this isn't my life. I never had this. I wasn't dating Bubblegum. I wasn't, you know, Marceline wasn't her own person. Her father was always over her shoulder for the most part. And Jake, even though there's him and Rainicorn are still in love, this isn't the life I knew. So basically, he discovers Ret-Khan, and Ret-Khan even decides, you know, hey, I kind of messed up on this universe. So what's he do? He reboots it again. Only this time, Finn and Jake are unaffected by the reboot. And it's funny, too, I wrote this little dialogue between Finn and Jake talking to Ret-Khan, and Jake asks him, hey, wait a minute, you rebooted everything around Oo, but you didn't reboot our memories. And Ret-Khan was like, yeah, so that doesn't make any sense. If you're gonna reboot something, reboot it all the way and not leave the previous anything from the previous continuity still in canon. Doesn't make sense to anyone. See what I did there? Yep. So yes, this whole story was basically me making jabs at the DC reboot. So basically, he reboots it again. This time around, Finn and Jake are the only ones with the current memory, and what happens is, this time around, it's Marceline and Bubblegum who are together. Rainicorn no longer exists in this universe. Ice King is a lot more darker and a lot more sinister villain. He has like this weird ice armor. I thought I was like, you know what? Let's give him like this 90s ice armor you'd see in like a Rob Liefeld comic. So that was basically it. And then Finn basically tells Ret-Khan, the more you do this, the more you're alienating yourself from your own work. The more you keep doing this, the worse it's going to get. So he basically convinces Ret-Khan to basically put the universe back the way it was. And he even, there was actually another thing where Ret-Khan was just trying to be like, I was just trying to help you. I erased so many things. I erased Fire Princess, I erased Lady Rainicorn, just because I don't think Jake needed a love interest. I don't think he needed it at all. I gave you Princess Bubblegum, your heart's desire. I gave Marceline her own life. And he basically said, I wanted to make it your way. And Finn tells him, no, you wanted to make it your way. This isn't your world. This is my world. This is the world I live in. This is the world we live in. You are just some annoying little imp who just came along and decided to change it in your own image. So that didn't please Ret-Khan at all, and in the end, Ret-Khan just left and moved on to another universe, saying that it wasn't fun anymore. So that's a little bit about Ret-Khan. But the other villain, another villain I created was D-Jango. D-Jango, and it's funny too because Django Unchained came out. The trailer came out today for the Quentin Tarantino movie Django Unchained. The D is silent. But what's funny about D-Jango is that when people say Django, it's like, no, you gotta say the D. The D is in the name. It's because it's D-Jango. D-Jango was this, he's basically this, how do I put this? He was a person at one point. But what happened was, when he was a kid, Marceline slaughtered his in a rage of hunger, and this kind of explains why she doesn't feed on blood. This kind of feeds on why she only feeds on anything red. She basically, when she wasn't able to feed for a while. So what happened was she came upon this family and devoured them. She basically slaughtered them, drank their blood, and horribly scarred this one boy's face. So took away his eyes. She slashed him across the face and took away his eyesight. So D-Jango basically forswore eternal vengeance on her, became a vampire slayer. He'd been hunting anything supernatural in the world looking for just Marceline. And when he came upon Marceline, he was ready to go. He was ready to throw down. And if anyone got in his way, like Bubblegum, Finn and Jake, anyone who got in his way, he considered them, traitors to the human world. D-Jango was also kind of like his what he looked like was kind of like a lot of the Clint Eastwood, like the poncho over his body, the tan pants. He wore a blindfold over his eyes because they're not there anymore. He was kind of based off of The Man with No Name and a bit of The Hunter from Gargoyles. And another thing is that he kept replacing his body parts with machine parts, so he's cybernetic. So in the final battle, and also the other thing is that he had a group called the Django Gang, the Django Gang. The Django Gang was basically this group of vampire hunters who he rallied behind him, who have been wronged by any supernatural creatures in the past. And they actually hunted down Marceline before D-Jango came, and Marceline killed them all. She basically told him, I'm not much of a killer, but get me, you have one chance to leave, or it's going to be very messy. And it was very messy. Until it just came down to D-Jango and Marceline, and D-Jango actually invented a weapon that allowed him to create sunlight. Think of it like if you all remember Ben 10, there was a weapon that Grandpa Max used on Ghost Freak when he when he wanted to take control of Ben's body, the sun gun. But this gun, however, it actually harnessed solar radiation and stored it within the gun so it could be used later. And it nearly killed Marceline until actually Princess Bubblegum came to Marceline's aid. And actually what happened was she actually rewired D-Jango, because now he was pretty much cybernetic. Rewired, shut him down with a remote control that she created, like a electromagnetic electronic magnetic pulse, used it on him, and then rewired him to never come back on again. So that was the end of D-Jango. Then the final villain was probably my favorite one to create, and that was Mordred. Mordred was another villain who had ties to Marceline, but he was more on a grand scale villain. Mordred is Marceline's. I created this character. Marceline was this the fan-made brother, older brother of Marceline. Mordred is a vampire like Marceline. His backstory was during the time of the Nightosphere, he fought alongside his father. Mordred fought alongside his father to take control of the Nightosphere, because there was one point that the Nightosphere was never under, Marceline's dad's control, Hudson Abadir's control. It was, it was just no control over it. It was any warlord who can take over the Nightosphere, and Abadir basically wanted control, and with his eldest son's aid, and their army they amassed, they actually took control. And Marceline was still a young kid when this happened, and she had this a lot of respect for her brother, for her older brother. He was known as Prince Mordred, but at the time when they were taking over the Nightosphere, he was referred to as General Mordred. What happened next was Mordred, after Hudson Abadir took over the Nightosphere, when he had full control of the Nightosphere, he grew tired and impatient, and actually he wanted control of the Nightosphere. So Mordred actually led a coup against his own father. What happened next was his father basically caught wind and didn't banish him or anything. He sealed him in a coffin for 1,000 years. He sealed him away, and he actually cast him into the land of Oo, and left him there for 1,000 years. The other thing was that this was another thing that kind of drove Marceline away from her father, because she she looked up to her brother very much, and they had and Mordred really did care about his sister. They had a very close sibling bond, but when Mordred was sealed away, that kind of drove them apart. Then we move to 1,000 years later, where Mordred's coffin is found, and by Starchy. We all know Starchy the donut. Starchy and Cinnamon Bun basically open it up to see what's inside, and out pops Mordred, who's this decaying and decrepit vampire. He doesn't feed, unlike Marceline, he doesn't feed on the red. He feeds on, he doesn't feed on anything like the color red. He feeds on blood. And he basically goes around, he skips the candy people, and actually goes around looking for anything that has blood in it, and feeds on it. Now the other thing about Mordred, that since he feeds on blood, his power is actually stronger than Marceline. Marceline feeds on the color red, which basically, it gives her great power, but not as much as Mordred. Mordred is also a battle-hardened warrior. He's been away for 1,000 years, and it's funny too, in the story I wrote between him and Marceline, he's like, "Aw, Dad ate your fries. Well, too bad. I was trapped in a box for 1,000 years. How do you think I feel?" So needless to say, he was a little pissed off, and it really hurt Marceline that it really hurt her the most that this is not the same brother that she grew up with. Mordred was driven mad after 1,000 years of being locked away in a box, and the only thing that kept him, kind of focused was getting his revenge. He even blamed Marceline for, basically like not standing with him. Even though she was a child, he gave her the opportunity to stand with him, and and Marceline thought he was playing a game. She thought Mordred was just playing another pretend game with her, and it turned out it was real. Mordred then went on to amass another army from the Nightosphere because they were the soldiers that tried to help him march against his own father were locked away in the Nightosphere. He just got the worst capital punishment. But he went to the Nightosphere to get two things: his army. Well, three things. Excuse me. He went to get his army, his sword, and basically get back at Dad. So what happened next was that after it. Now there's a special thing about Mordred's sword. Mordred's sword can actually cut portals into the Nightosphere and into the world of the Land of Oo. He can actually cut a portal and just jump to the other side, basically. And after he got his men out. He then marched into his father's throne room, and his father's like, "You're locked away. How are you here? And what is your purpose here?" And all Mordred said is, "Succeeding you, father." And then proceeds to impale him through the stomach, and then behead him. And then Mordred becomes ruler of the Nightosphere, but he's not done yet. He's like, "I have the Nightosphere, but after being trapped in a box for 1,000 years, my spirit has looked upon this place called Oo. I want that now." So he basically, now with the entire armies of the Nightosphere, now he has an army big enough to actually conquer the land of Oo, and it's just him conquering parts of Oo all over. And Marceline is forced at the end, along with a small group of her friends, Bubblegum, who in the story, in the story I wrote that Bubblegum creates this battle armor. She creates this huge mech armor, this huge mech armor she uses called the Bubblegum Battlesuit. Lady Rainicorn helps out. Lady Rainicorn, why have I been saying Princess Rainicorn? Excuse me, but Lady Rainicorn helps out. Fire Princess, Ice King, Finn, Jake, and Marceline, and Susan Strong, excuse me, I forgot her too. But all of them band together to fight Mordred in a slugfest in which Marceline actually kills her own brother. After a long and, intense battle, she actually manages to kill him. Now, the other thing was, how'd she kill him? It was because of sunlight, because Mordred was actually a daywalker. He could actually stand the sunlight. So what happened was, Marceline took her axe and Mordred's sword after cutting his hands off during the fight. Actually took the axe and his sword and beheaded him. But not before saying, you could have been so much better than Dad, but you turned out to be worse. So she beheaded him and burned his body. But however, his head was still alive. His head managed to survive. And what happened was, following that, his body, he grew a new body out of the severed head, and went under a new persona called Morgan Dread. Morgan Dread, under that identity, he actually looked different. In the original idea I had for his look was body armor, like this suit of armor with spikes along the arms. His sword actually was this long, elongated blade with ridges on each end. The other thing was his hair was long and white. The other thing is that he had these two wings. He had these two wings on his back, as well as like Marceline, who has a motif of she loves rock. She loves rock music. With Mordred, he has a taste for classical music. He has a taste for the piano. He has a taste for the violin. He actually at some points his favorite instrument is the cello, which he sometimes carries around with him during a lot of campaigns when he's taking over he's actually sitting on the sidelines playing his cello, and he's like, "I'm playing to the concerto of their screams of agony. Show no pity. I'll play faster." So he is a very messed up character, but wouldn't you be after your dad threw you in a box for a coffin for 1,000 years? So that was Mordred. But then when he became Mordred, his new identity was he was this hooded figure. He actually pretended to be an ally to Finn and Jake until he could actually gain all of his power back, and he actually used this the stone we saw in that 2-part story, Daddy's Little Monster. That stone that was used to corrupt Marceline, he actually used that to get his power back. He went back to the Nightosphere after Marceline managed to resurrect her dad. He killed his father again and took the stone, and he officially took control of the Nightosphere and proceeded to beat the living hell out of Marceline. Preceding that, it was Finn, the second time. Finn actually kills him. Finn actually cuts off instead of beheading him, he splits his head down the middle and actually cuts him right down the middle. And he's like, try regenerate it from that. But yeah, when he went under the identity of Mordred, he pretended to be an ally to Finn and Jake until he revealed himself, like I said. So that's a bit about the villains I created for the Adventure Time series. These are old stories. I might revisit these villains again. I really love to rewrite them. In fact, actually, it's funny too, because I actually sent character bios of Ret-Khan and Mordred to the creators of Adventure Time to at least be used in the comic book, and they kind of rejected it. But don't worry, I didn't tell them, Marceline. I actually sent the whole, what the character was. But don't worry, I didn't tell them. Oh yeah, in my story, Marceline cuts off his head, and there's a lot of beheading and dismemberment. Don't worry, I didn't put that. It's just the generalization of the character, his personality, or their personalities. Excuse me. Nothing really gory backstory, but it was a fan fiction. I was like, you know what? Let's go out. Let's just have Marceline cut somebody's head off, and Finn cut a guy down the middle. So, pretty much that's it for the Adventure Time part. Coming up next is actually another one that I'm really excited to do, and again, these are my villains that I've created for Adventure Time stories. I really should get back to writing these stories again and, expanding more on these villains now that Adventure Time said no thank you to these guys. So, who knows, maybe they'll get fanfiction popularity. Who knows? But all in all, guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed this, and coming up next is the Stormhawks villains. So, I really hope all of my fellow Stormhawk fans are excited to see what kind of villains I created for that. And trust me, I created some majorly messed up villains for the Stormhawk series I wrote back in the day. So anyway, guys, I'm out.